you can start chopping away by taking on e5. So it's not super easy here. But I do end up playing king c6 because after he doubles, now I can play d4. I played an insane game against a FIDE master. This was round 1 of the Exton Open. Wait, let me fix that. And open. And I am playing against Karl Dehmelt, and I just played him in my last USCF rated tournament in the last round last Sunday. So now I'm playing him again, and in that game I had a winning position that I failed to convert. It wasn't quite so easy. But yeah, I'm excited to share with you this game. This is going to be a no engine recap. This is game in 90, delay 10, so one of the longer time controls that I play. I play a lot of quick tournaments. And yeah, let's just hop right into it now. I will go through the game review at the very end of this video, but for most of this, it will just be my human analysis with my human eyes. So he plays e4, I play c6, and we get another Caro-Kann here. I played him once before. I played him 2 times with black before. In the first game I played against him, he played e5, and he went like c3, I think? Or he might have taken on c5. I actually forget what he did, to be honest. Actually, now that I think about it, I think he went like knight f3 and then took with the queen like this and did something like this. I think this is what he did the first time I played against him. The second time I played against him, he exchanged in the center and then played the pan off with c4. And we got a game like this. But in this game, he went back to the advanced variation, and I went back to c5. He did go knight f3. I took, and he took back with his knight, not with his queen. And I developed my knight, attacking the pawn on e5 as well, and just developing a piece, which makes a lot of sense. Here, after knight f3, I just want to point out that, yeah, black does probably want to take the pawn on d4, because white did not commit a pawn to c3 to help support the center. So now this e-pawn can be sometimes a little bit weak, potentially. If black wanted to, I might be able to get away with bishop g4. It always gets a little bit dicey sometimes when you commit the bishop out so early with the pawn on c5 still hanging, because like sometimes white can hold on to it and have a decent position. The more solid way to approach this position is to take on d4. Okay, so I develop my knight out. He develops his bishop, pinning my knight to my king, and now he's threatening the to win a pawn here at the bare minimum. So I play bishop d7 to guard my knight, and he plays e6. I think I've seen this move before. I'm not sure. I don't think I played it in any over-the-board games, though. But the idea is I can't take with the bishop, of course, because then my knight loses a defender. So I take with the pawn, but now these double pawns make it hard for me to develop. Like this bishop is not going to be easy to develop. And now Karl takes my knight on c6. And Karl, he loves knights, which I understand. Knights are better than bishops. I totally agree with that. But what's really interesting about this is that black has this huge center pawn mass. It's huge. And if I'm able to successfully get e5 in and maybe even e4, if I can push this pawn, then I'm great. The issue is he plays queen e2, and I cannot put to e5. And often white sacrifices a pawn on e6. Black has to sacrifice it back so they can start moving their pieces. I develop my knight. He castles, and I play g6. So this is how I'm choosing to develop here. I am not interested at all in playing king f7. And then after like rook e1, queen c8, defending my extra pawn. I have so little interest in doing this. This looks absolutely awful. This is how you lose in like 15 moves. Like when like black is completely stuck here, like there's no point in doing this. Don't even try. I'm not even going to calculate that. Like, I'm not even going to calculate trying to hang on to the pawn. No, you should just get your pieces out. Anyways, just want to point that out, though. So, rook e1. So, he's piling on the e-file, and I just decide to continue development here. I did think for a while on this move. Let me see. How much time? So, I spent about 8 minutes on the move g6. wanted to make sure everything was good. And what I calculated was, after he moves his rook on e1, and after he takes a pawn, if he goes back to e2, so he takes a pawn, we trade a knight for a bishop, and if he goes back to e2 and I castle, I want to make sure that I'm okay after queen takes e7, and in this case I am, because he's not developed. He's got the 6-pack of pieces over here, and I can play rook e8 and is completely winning here. He can't take my queen. Oh, he can't try to trade queens because it's checkmate, and something like this could occur, for example, which would be very good for me. He does not play that though. After queen d7, he plays knight d2, and then I trade, and then I play king d7. So I kick out his rook with a tempo. We trade queens, and my king is just vibing in the center. He is leading the charge. He is leading the charge in this case, and spoiler alert, he's gonna stay there. He ain't gonna hide from no pieces. So Karl goes rook e2, which is a good move because it allows him to double up in the future. It also guards the f2 pawn if I ever try to pile up pressure on it. I play rook a e8. Karl actually said after the game that he thinks that I moved the wrong rook. Most likely rook he8 is the better rook to move, and now this rook on a8 is guarding the a pawn in case of any shenanigans attacking it, and maybe this rook on a8 can also go to b8 and pressure the b file. I'm not sure why I played rook a e8 instead of rook he8. I think I wasn't sure where I wanted. I was thinking. I thought of a scenario like, let's say, like this, where I have my rooks here. I'm gonna like attack the king side. So I think that's why I moved my a rook over, because I thought the rooks belonged on f8 and e8. In the game, I found out that was not the case. I should have left this rook on a8, and it would have been better there. Anyways, I do end up moving it there. He goes knight b3. And he's going to try to control the dark squares here. He has to be a little bit careful of this diagonal though, but he figures out a good configuration. I end up playing e5, so I expand in the center here. I got the big black center, the BBC, and he plays c3 to stunt my pawns from steamrolling. And I wasn't afraid of like knight c5 check, because I can just go king d6 and the knight's being attacked, and it would probably have to move. Like, I guess white could go b4, but this looks so dicey. Maybe it's okay. Maybe. Like, part of me is just tempted to play a5. Oh, but then knight b7 check. Yeah, it's not super easy. So, I mean, maybe he could have played this move, but you have to be kind of bold to play that. So he just plays c3, and now I play king d6 to cover c5, and he plays bishop e3. And when I first saw that he played c3 and was going to play bishop e3, when I first saw that he was going to do that, I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to move my knight back and defend c5 and prepare for further center expansion. But I didn't realize that the pawn on a7 was hanging. And in this position, I was really worried, and I was like trying to calculate, and then I was like, oh wait, you dummy. He can't take the pawn because of c5. And his bishop's trapped. So, yeah, I was... So it took me a couple minutes to realize that this pawn is untouchable. But I do play knight d7 though, because I do not want him to play bishop c5 check, or maybe put his knight in the center instead. I don't know which one he would do, whether it's his bishop or not. I assume the bishop would go to c5, but I'm not 100% sure. So I play knight d7. Now he plays f4. So he's trying to break apart my center here. If I try to maintain my center and just play e4, look at how beautiful the dark squares are for him in this position. Maybe he'll play bishop d4 to try to trade off the dark square bishop. Maybe he'll just play knight d4. Probably not. Although, I don't think it's bad, though. So, he wants me to play a move like e4. Now, he has easy access to these squares. So, after f4, I have to think for a while here on how I want to proceed. And I end up deciding, oh, also if I take the pawn, Then bishop takes f4, and just look how my king literally has no squares to go to. I would have to self-pin, or not self-pin, but I have to block with the bishop, and then he could double up. So now if I take, I lose in exchange when all is said and done. And I'm just stuck. Like, I'm just literally stuck. There's nothing I can do here. And if I play rook e6 trying to double up, because if he takes, now we're just trading everything, which is fine. But if I double up like this, if I try to double up, now you can play it knight c5. And how am I... And if I take with the knight, then he can take, and he removed a defender of my bishop. And if I take with the king, same thing. He removed a defender of my pieces, and now his rook is in. Although in this case, I might be okay in this case. So maybe I didn't have to worry about that. But anyways, pinning myself like this, or just didn't seem very good. I could also block with the knight, but this seems like even worse. Like, it just didn't look very appealing. So after f4, I played c5. And I'm just going to try to roll these pawns down. If I can get the pawn to d4, that'd be really great. Also, this rook on e2, if I can, like, if this file opens up, this bishop is pinned to the rook. So there could be some tactics like that, although it never comes into play, because in this case, my king's on a dark square, and the bishop can get out of the pin with a check. So, but it's something to keep in mind, though. He plays rook d2, getting his rook out of the potential pin. Also, just attacking the d5 pawn, preparing to double up on the d file. And it's really hard to defend this d5 pawn because, like, my center is being defended by a shoestring. You know, like, it's kind of flimsy. My king and knight are the only things defending the c pawn, and you can start chopping away by taking on e5, so it's not super easy here. But I do end up playing king c6, because after he doubles, now I can play d4. And I thought for a long time on this move, I thought for about 15 minutes move, because there was a lot to think. There's a lot to think about. Firstly, he could take on f4, or sorry, take on e5 with his f4 pawn. And what do I want to do? Do I take with the rook, the knight, or the bishop? Or do I take his bishop? But then, if he takes my knight, now I can go e2. And he has to keep his rook on the e file, but now he hangs his rook. But then I realized, okay, if I take his bishop, then he can throw in this check. Rook d6 check. So now if I go king c7, now he takes my knight with check, as opposed to not taking it with check earlier. So I don't have enough time for e2, for pawn to e2. And then, I'm getting absolutely, cooked here. I mean, he just takes 2 pieces in a row at the very minimum. Or he can bring his king closer to blockade the pawn if he's worried about that. So my first initial thoughts before playing d4 was maybe I can take on e3, but there's rook d6, and if I take on e3 and then he goes check and I go up with the king, that might not be that is still bad. It's still bad because he takes, and my bishop is still hanging, and now after e2 he can blockade with the rook, and now my king isn't close enough to the rook to capture it. So he deflects my king away. He would deflect my king away if I did take on e3. So I dismissed taking on e3. And I thought, well, maybe bishop takes is okay, or not maybe it's okay, but it's something I had to calculate. And in this case, it's not hard to calculate. You just lose your center, and the pawns and the rooks are still super active on this open file. It's bad news bears. So, and if I take with the rook, it's kind of appealing. I'm attacking this bishop here, and if he moves it out of the way, now what? Now what? And my conclusion was I'm most likely just losing my center and losing a pawn at a minimum, because I cannot take here because I lose the knight, and even if I win the second pawn, it's still not good enough, of course. So I ended up taking with the knight. And now I'm looking at this really juicy c4 square, maybe g4 as well, and his bishop is still hanging at the end of the day. So if he moves his bishop back, well, now my knight is no longer hanging on d7, so now I can just take on c3 if I want to. Or I can throw in knight c4 first, whatever I want to do. So now his bishop is hanging, and my knight is getting active. He takes on d4, but now I play knight c4, and I'm hitting both the rook and the bishop. The bishop is not defended by anything, so I'm winning. I'm winning something by force. Except what Karl does is he pushes the pawn to d5, checking my king. So now I'm forced to move. If I go to d6, he can get his bishop out of danger with a check. If I go back to d7, he can throw in his knight with a check. If I go back to c7, he can go bishop f4 and once again get his bishop out of danger with a check, and then he can move his rook afterwards, so I'm not winning any material. So d5 check is very tricky here, and I move my king forward. Once again, my king is leading the charge. He is leading the charge here. I play king b5, and now he takes on c5 with the bishop here. I take his rook, and now dust has settled. He has 2 pawns for the exchange in this case. So here I have an extra rook for his knight, but he has these 2 extra pawns, so it's not so simple. I think black is better, but by not much here, and I think for a while in this position, I think for about 10 minutes in this position, all the way down to 12 minutes. So we start with 90 minutes and a delay 10. I get down to 12 minutes here. Because I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to proceed. Like, what is the best way to proceed? And I decide to play a really interesting move, a5. With the idea, of course, that if he pushes, I'm going to play a4. And if he moves his knight, then I win the bishop. So this bishop is only guarded by the knight. And if he moves his rook to defend his bishop, well, great. Now his rook is not behind his passed pawn, and now that he's trying to push. So I thought a5 was a really good move, and he moves his bishop back out of danger, also opening up the square, the c5 square for his knight to go to potentially. I end up blockading his pawn because he's going to push it and push it and push it. He plays g4, and the question is, like, I guess he could play knight d4 immediately, but it's kind of a tough decision to make because you're kind of forcing a trade here, and the more pieces he trades, the more likely I am to have an advantage. Of course, he cannot take with the bishop here, even though it attacks the rook, because he loses the pawn, and now his bishop is pinned to his rook, so if he takes me, we just trade. But once again, now I'm only down 1 pawn for the exchange, and so this should be winning. It'll just take a lot of work. So he goes g4 first to make luft for his king, and allow it to go forward. But now I centralize my other rook, and he plays a knight d4 check now. And here it's just an absolute time scramble. After knight d4 check, he has 5 minutes. I take with bishop, I have 5 minutes. Time scramble time. Once again. Once again. Just like in my last game, that time scramble. I think black should still be a bit better here, but it's not so easy. Like I said, with white's extra pawns here, Karl finds an interesting resource here. He plays a4 check. And the idea is, so with this exchange, Karl's idea is that my king is completely boxed in by the rook, but then also boxed in by the x-ray, by the bishop's x-ray. Because if I go to b6, for example, rook d2 check here because of the bishop, so I would have to give up my exchange, and now Karl's just up 2 pawns, and this is bad news bears. So, and if I go to c5, it's a little bit better, because after rook d2, there's takes, and now rook d5 check. And maybe this king and pawn ending is holding, because my king gets over to b3 first. But I don't trust it. Although I guess I do win this pawn, so maybe the king and pawn ending is holding. But I just play king a6 though. You know, I'm up in exchange. I'm down 2 pawns, but I'm up in exchange, and I want to win this game. Karl plays b3, and here I think I missed my biggest chance here. I think I had to go rook b2, guarding b3, guarding the b file, forcing him to defend, and then going king b7, centralizing my king, getting it out of the corner. I think that's key, because what happens in the game is that I go king b7 immediately, and now Karl plays b4, and he's forced, and he's trading the last set of pawns here. And, you know, maybe asking, why didn't he play b4 immediately? Well, in this case, I can take, and now this d5 pawn is hanging, and after rook b6 check, I don't go here because now he's setting up discoveries. I'd go to a5, and now this a4 pawn is dropping as well. And I'm not sure if this is winning because we traded off a lot of pawns, but it's definitely not losing, and I still have winning chances here. So that's why I didn't go b4 immediately, because it's d5 pawn. But now with my king on the b file, now when he takes on b4, it comes with a check. So that's why I think I had to go rook b2, and then make his rook commit to defending, and then go b7, because now he cannot trade, he cannot force this a pawn to get off the board. But who knows? Like, maybe there was something else I could do here, and also maybe after rook b3, maybe I have. No, I think I still like king b7 the most, because I want to get my king to blockade this passed pawn, and like, how does he make progress? Like, I guess he could play king f1, but where is it going? King g2 maybe to try to bring it up. But now king c7, and then if king f3, now king c6, king d6 maybe, and like maybe, yeah, maybe black should just try to go to b4 and win this b3 pawn, or win this d6 pawn, and try to target white's weaknesses, that maybe white can't defend everything. I'm not really sure what the best way to proceed is, but all I know is that this is better than what happened in the game. What happened in the game is I went b7 immediately, and now very, very tricky. Karl is very, very tricky. If I go to c7 here, I lose the exchange. I will go on to lose the game. If I go to a6 here, I forget why I didn't like it. Don't remember why I didn't like it. Something about it. This pawn is hanging, so if he goes here, I'm not too worried. So maybe I could have gone back to to a6, but instead of that, I try to centralize my king, and then he checks me again. I could go here without bishop b6, and I mean, he's just gonna corral his pawn forward. But maybe I didn't have to worry about bishop b6 because I have this move rook c8. So maybe I shouldn't have worried about it. But instead of that, so I go back to b7. And if he had repeated, I honestly might have accepted the draw. I probably should. But he doesn't repeat. He plays rook f4, trying to win my h7 pawn. But now I just take the pawn. He gives me a check. I move my king forward. And really, really tricky. I can't go here blockading the a pawn because of rook a7 checkmate. From nowhere. From out of nowhere. It's checkmate. Like, what? Absolutely nuts. So I have to go back to the c file, away from the defense of the a pawn. And it's my pawn. But now I come up with an interesting idea, which is to go check and then pin. Well, not pin, but add pressure. I think this was wrong. I think I should not have done that. I think I should have gone rook d4 immediately, because now his rook is on the edge of the board still. And if he tries to attack my pawn, I can just go check, defend, and defend it. I think this was the way to go. But instead, I force him to defend his bishop, and now his rook can go. He's studying rook f6 check to win my g6 pawn. But so now I play rook d4, attacking both these pawns at once, and he cannot take my rook because it's pinned to his king. But this allows king f1. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing now? Both rooks are hanging, and I have to give up a rook. But his pawns are still hanging. And I take his g4 pawn, and as long as I can deal with this pawn, I'm doing okay. And this pawn is hanging right now. And even if we trade off the a pawn for the g pawn, a rook pawn is likely to be a draw in a lot of cases. However, I have to be careful because my king is so far away. If my like if I could trade off these two pawns and have my king over here, great. But the thing is, my king is so far away. So he plays a5, but now I bring my king forward, and it's actually super hard for him to defend this a5 pawn. He could play passively and play rook a7, and I can't approach the rook very easily because the pawn guards the square for the king to approach the rook. So he could play passively like this, but he doesn't like that. He doesn't like playing passively. So instead of that, he moves his king forward, but now I move my rook back. So, and now if he pushes his pawn or anything like that, well, of course, I'm threatening a skewer here. So he sees the skewer, I move my rook back. He plays a4, I move my rook. He moves his rook to defend the pawn. So now both pawns are defended, and this is an absolute time scramble. The last, like, 15 moves, I just remembered from memory. So he defends his h4 pawn, but now I win the a pawn. And this is just a draw. There is no way, there is likely no way for white to force themselves to win this pawn, and this should just be a draw. But he's going to ask a couple questions here. He plays king up, attacking my rook. I move my rook back, and now he moves his rook to cut off my king, and he comes up with an interesting idea. I play king b6, he moves his rook up, and it says winner because I flagged. And he won the game. I, I, I wanted to play king b5, but rook b4 wins the game. I think. Except it doesn't win the game because I go check here and here. And even if he approaches me like this, I can go check, and if the king continues to go up, I go here. Although in this case, that's not good. So maybe this specific position is losing. But the thing is, I'm not supposed to go king b5, and the move I made was rook f. Well, the move I was going to make was rook f1. So after this king moves, now I go rook f6, and after king g5, I move not there. I move my rook, and I'm never going to lose this. I'm never going to lose this pawn, and life is good. Although in this case, maybe we can go rook c8, and maybe this is still losing. Maybe this is still losing. Because he's ready to go rook g8. I thought this ending was drawn, but maybe I just thought that because I was going to flag. Maybe I can go rook f5. Maybe that's the way to go. And now he can't attack the pawn so easily. Maybe I go here now. And if he goes here, I go check. And now I can start bringing my king forward. I have to be careful of the move like h5. But here I can go check and then take the pawn. So it should be fine. So this should be a draw. This should be a draw. But I flag. I flag. And yeah, that's the game. That's the game. It was pretty brutal. I'm not gonna lie. I was pretty heartbroken about that. I worked so hard, and I lose like how I always do. I lose like how I always do. It's like the same story. Although in this case, the position was more balanced. Like, I really don't think I was much better at any point in the game. Like, maybe just slightly better. But I mean, his extra two pawns were like really strong, and yeah, I'm sure he missed some chances too. But man, I'm getting sad just thinking about this game. So I'm gonna end it here. I'm going to hit the game review, and I will see you guys in the next one.